Howdy, y'all. Welcome back to another episode of Griddle Porn without the griddling. Um, Hopefully soon I'll be reunited with my griddle. Um, Today we're going to talk about camping, specifically tent buying. Um, we have plenty of tents, but that doesn't stop me from window shopping. I look on Amazon and YouTube reviews for different styles of tents that I don't have yet. Just like, well, you can't have enough hammocks, but she would argue that I have more than enough hammocks, but that doesn't keep me from window shopping. But I see a lot of common complaints about tents, and so this is a basic guide for new tent buyers, and maybe there'll be a suggestion or two for experienced buyers, or at least you'll be entertained if you're an experienced tent camper. Unfortunately, I don't have my camping gear with me. I'm out in Utah at the moment, and my camping gear is not here in Utah. But I'm gonna talk about it anyway. Our current tent is a core tent, instant pop-up tent that I bought from Costco. Yeah, it flies. Sorry. We love it. It's perfect for us. And but let's go on to your tent. Okay, we moved inside to get away from the fly. Hopefully he hasn't followed me around. The biggest complaint that I see on almost every single tent review on Amazon is it's too small. They lied about how big it is. No, they didn't. If it's a 4-person tent, that means 4 adults in sleeping bags can fit inside. In reality, that means there'll be room for 2 people on a cot or a sleeping pad with room for their stuff. An 8-person tent has room for 4 people-ish. A 12-person tent has room for 6 people. A 1-person tent has room for keep that in mind when you're tent shopping. It's going to be generally half the size it says it is. Our core is like a 6 or 8-person, and it's perfect for the 2 of us. When we get the cot set up in the bedroom portion, there's room for us to walk on either side of the cots. And then the other half we use for storage. We set up our chairs. If it's raining, we have room to hang out. So that's perfect for us. Speaking of the size, keep in mind that there's very few straight walled tents. Most of them are slanted, and when you take into account that slant, it's not going to be as roomy when you put your cot in a sleeping pad and then your head's rubbing against the tent walls, and that's no fun. You're going to get condensation through the tent wall, wicking through the tent wall, and so your 7-foot tent will only have about 6 feet at cot level. Keep that in mind. That's very important. Don't touch the tent walls. You get the wicking. That's how things get wet. Speaking of getting wet, seam sealer. You want seam sealer. Even if it's a expensive tent that you get from REI, or a cheap Chinese tent from Temu. Either way, you want seam sealer. A lot of complaints are the tent leaked. Well, that's because they don't tape up the seams except for some really quality. Even then, you want it. Seam sealer's cheap, couple bucks. Pick it up, seal up all the any place you see the thread where cloth is attached to each other. Seal up that seam, you'll be happy. It's cheap insurance. Another cheap insurance is a ground cloth. You want to get a tarp or a ground cloth to put under the tent. This helps protect it from sticks and stones and breaking my bones. No, moisture. It's an extra layer of insulation from the cold ground at night. Don't have it sticking out from under your tent, because if it rains, that's a way for the water to get between your tent and the tarp. You want it slightly smaller than the tent footprint. So yes, and you can get tarps really cheap. You don't have to. I've seen ground cloths from the tent manufacturers that are like a couple $100 or $100. You can get a cheap Harbor Freight tarp for $5, and it does the job. That's just me. Speaking of Harbor Freight, we also buy furniture pads from them to use inside the tent. It serves the same purpose. It's protection from poking holes in your tent. You can put tarp inside. You can get an RV rug, indoor-outdoor RV mat. You can find those cheap on Amazon. We like the furniture pads because they're like carpeting, nice thick carpeting. It's nice and soft on our footsies. Also, like our cots aren't poking into the material, the tent floor itself. Especially if I plop down on the cot or if I sit down on the chair, I don't want it sliding around on the floor, damaging it. Plus, you get, when you step in, instead of getting mud all over your tent floor, it's getting on the whatever you're using, the tarp or furniture pad or whatever, and you can shake it out or wash it or whatever. So that's indoor, top side and bottom side. Put something to protect your investment. Oh, this is a biggie. Rolling up your tent to fit back in the bag. If you just try to fold it back like it was, it's not going to happen. It won't fit back in the bag, and you'll cuss the company for giving you a bag too small. And I used to think the same way until I found this helpful tip. And I wish I actually had my tent here and I could show you. Your tent poles, once they're folded up, and usually they have their own little bag, they're your guide for how wide it needs to be to fit in the back in the bag. So you you lay down your folded up tent poles next to the tent. You fold it up until it's the same width or slightly under the width of your poles. And then you use the poles inside as you roll it up, the folded up tent. This helps keep it compact. It tells you exactly how wide you need to be. You may have to stop every so often and push air out. And I should have let off with this. keep your doors and windows unzipped. That allows the air to escape when you're putting up your tent or folding up your tent. So roll it up in a nice little tight ball around uh, the tent poles. That gives you a guide and makes you a nice compact thing that should fit back in the bag unless they really did give you a crappy bag. Since I found that, I think I found it on YouTube, that helpful tip. It's made a world of difference, and we don't have trouble squeezing it in anymore. Next, zippers, sticky zippers. Let's talk sticky zippers. Your zippers will be stiff when it's new, so you want some kind of wax, and the easiest way is get a cheap candle or even a crayon works, and run it on the zippers, work the zipper a couple times, maybe reapply the wax. It doesn't take, you don't have to get something fancy. A cheap candle will do, or if your child won't miss the crayon, steal a crayon. What kind of weather are you going to be in? If you're going to be in hot, humid, southern environs, you'll want a tent with lots of mesh, lots of windows, breathability. Whereas if you're in northern climes, in cooler weather, you don't want all that mesh necessarily. You still want ventilation, one, so you don't suffocate, but also to keep condensation down. Condensation sucks. That's when you wake up in the morning and water's dripping on your face. If the tent should at the very least have vents, either at ground level or up top, to help keep that airflow even in cold weather. I've seen people who use a tarp in between the tent and the rain fly. I've never had to do that, and I'm reluctant to. If I had to, I would definitely try it. But layering, having the right sleeping pads, sleeping bags, using a Mr. Buddy heater will help keep you warm, and most importantly, it gives you a nice reason to cuddle. Anyway, just that's more something to think about. 3-season tents, a 4-season tent you can use in colder weather. I love camping in colder weather, but even though I use a 3-season tent as a 4-season tent, I just layer up and I have a nice sleeping bag. I'm old and trying to get dressed in a tent that's 3 feet tall. I'm too old for that, so I need a tent I can stand up in, pull on my britches without getting a Charlie horse. That's a personal thing. When I was in my 20s and 30s, I didn't care. Give me a rock as a pillow and I was all set, but not anymore. This is a big one. Practice setting up your tent at home before you go camping. One, you'll find out ahead of time if there's something, a broken pole, something ripped, if you have to take it back. Also, if it's difficult, doing it a couple times will give you an idea of how to set it up so you're not spending 2 hours of your camping trip on your family vacation trying to set up the tent and all the other campers are laughing at you. They laugh at me anyway, but I give them reasons to. Our core tent is nice and roomy, but bigger isn't always better. Years ago, we bought a gigantic Kmart tent that was on clearance. It was like a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 3-car garage, walk-in closets, wine cellar. This tent was huge. But the problem was trying to find a campsite that would actually hold it was difficult sometimes. Some spaces have so many trees, or they're unlevel, or they only have a pad for a certain size tent. Some tents, or some campsites I've seen only have room to drop off a teardrop trailer and then you have to go park someplace else. So yeah, it was nice to have that gigantic tent when we were laying around inside, but not so much, especially trying to set the darn thing up or take it down. Speaking of size, did I mention the tent walls? I think I did. The slanted walls. Let's not go over that again then. Tent stakes. When you buy your tent, throw away the tent stakes and get some decent ones. There's going to be tons of arguments over the best type of tent stake or the material. You can get titanium, you can get plastic, you can get steel. There's the nail type, there's the wide type. I have a couple of big orange screws. I use those for, I have a Tensa portable hammock stand so I can carry it on the motorcycle and set up my hammock anywhere. If you remember the old dog stakes where you could tie your dog outside, screw in the giant screw, it's kind of like that. Holds the stand down in any soil or especially sandy. Generally you won't need that though. There will be all kinds of arguments over what's best as a tent stake. I've got some of all of them pretty much. The one thing everyone agrees on is the tent stakes that came with your tent are probably junk, and as soon as you hit them with a rock or something, they're going to bend and you'll be whining and leaving a bad review on Amazon. Just replace them, and that takes care of that. Speaking of rocks and hammers and hammering in your tent stakes, I just use a camp axe. I like things that have multiple uses. You can get fancy tent stake hammers or mallets. but my camp axe has a hammer edge, so I can hammer it down. I can also use it to chop wood, move around embers in the fire. I can shave with it. I can cut my steak if I forget to bring a knife, and I never forget to take a knife. There's a little cutout in the blade, the bottom edge of the blade, so I can grab a tent stake and pull it out of the ground, because unless it's rained, there's a good chance your tent stakes are going to be a pain in the butt to take out. So you probably want to make sure your hammer or mallet or axe has something to pull the stake out of the ground. Speaking of multiple use items, I always carry quality duct tape like Gorilla tape or T-Rex tape. You can use it to patch a hole in your screen, keep the skeeters out. You can, that giant Kmart tent that we had, we used it to repair the tent poles when one of them split. It's very versatile. You can, if you're swinging your axe around and chop your arm off, you can use it to tape off the wound. If your partner snores, you can cover their mouth. Anyway, duct tape, and get quality duct tape. If you get some cheap duct tape, you're going to have to wind it twice as much, or it won't stick to itself, or if you have a quality duct tape, it will do the job and work well. I mentioned keeping warm. Just a quick thing about sleeping bags. If it says a 40-degree bag, well, let's say it says 20-degree bag, that means you will survive down to 20 degrees, but a decent, even mid-quality or cheap sleeping bag should have a comfort rating, which if it says 20 degrees, the comfort rating is probably 60 to 40 or something. If it says it's a 40-degree bag, that means only use it in Florida in the heat of summer. If you're going to use it in winter, you don't want maybe a 0-degree bag. That would be good down to 20 degrees as a general guide. And there's ways to keep you warmer, like layering and snuggling and things like that. I'll probably do another video sometime on keeping warm in your sleeping bag. That's pretty much it for tents. Hopefully you were entertained. Hopefully you learned something, even if you're an experienced camper. The trolls will probably say, well, you didn't talk about this, or you're wrong about that, or blah, blah, blah. Keep it to yourself. This was meant for the beginning tent buyer to get them out there having fun. Don't sweat the small stuff. Don't make the small mistakes. Yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye!